Good morning, everybody. Welcome to PDC 09. How's everybody doing this morning? Now this afternoon? Are you sacrificing lunch to be here? I'd be truly honored by that. Thanks so much. My name is Bill Crow. I'm with a group called Live Labs at Microsoft. We're not a product group, but we work on real close with product teams. And I hope I got some interesting stuff to show you and what we're doing at Live Labs, and also to talk a bit about how we go about doing that. First, let me reintroduce Live Labs to you if you've not heard of them or if you've heard of them in the past. The mission at Live Labs is to advance the state of the art of the internet. We want to create new transformative experiences. Now, that's a pretty big, lofty goal, and we chip away at that. We do it through lots and lots of experiments. You've probably heard of some of the experiments we've done. One of them has led to the deep zoom feature that's in Silverlight, and we'll be showing you a little bit of that and some hints of where we're going with that. An experiment we released last year called Photosynth has now actually become part of a product team that's no longer in Live Labs. It's now part of the Bing Maps organization, but that started in Live Labs. Deepfish you may or may not have heard of. It was an experiment we released, doesn't exist anymore. And there's been a handful of others, Thumbtack and a few things. We do lots of experiments. We try things out. Sometimes they don't work, they don't go anywhere, but we still learn a tremendous amount from them. And some of the stuff we do does get some traction, and we're able to engage directly with the product teams at Microsoft, as we've done with the Deep Zoom feature in Silverlight, and help make those products better. In Live Labs, we do these experiments, but we also actually ship code out of our group in Live Labs. We work directly with the product teams, and the Deep Zoom, the multi-scale image control that's in Silverlight today is actually written by developers on my team at Live Labs. So we try to straddle both sides of that. So the Sea Dragon team that I manage in Live Labs, our goal is to inspire and enable transformative user experiences for retrieving and exploring content, and do that independent of where that content may live. The first three words are the important parts in how we approach what we do. To both inspire, do experiments, try things out, learn some stuff, get feedback, and enable. Actually write real production code, write tools, write components, and work directly with the product teams that stuff actually ships in a way that enables both the features in our products at Microsoft and enables you as developers to take advantage of what we develop based on our experiments and what we learn. So a lot of things we do out of our team in our brief life. We're only about 3 years old. We did again, as I mentioned, the Deep Zoom feature in Silverlight. We are the rendering engine that's underneath Photosynth. There's a website, seadragon.com, which I'll show you, which is actually the web role of an Azure service that has server roles behind that provide content creation. We have a library of tools for creating content in this Deep Zoom format we're going to take a look at and learn about. We've experimented a lot on mobile platforms, tried some stuff out. You'll see some things in the future we're doing there. And we've done some experiments on Surface and a bunch more stuff. So I've kind of waved my arms a bit about some of the stuff we're doing. Let's actually look at it. And to do it, I asked the guests to come along. And so I'd like to introduce Scott Stanfield, who's the CEO of Vertigo Consulting. And Scott and his team at Vertigo have done some really cool stuff building on some of this technology. So Scott?
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everybody. Thanks. Thanks, Bill. So Bill talks about the Sea Dragon team inspiring and enabling some great stuff. We are in this incredibly fortunate position at Vertigo to use their technology on a piece of content that is just stunning. It's the Winter Olympics, and I have to show you. I'm sporting my Ralph Lauren Team USA shirt. Sorry, a lot of this is very U.S. focused because this is for NBC, who is the U.S.'s IOC sponsor for the Olympics. If you're in Canada, it's going to be CTV and other countries, of course. So a lot of thought and a lot of attention is going to be given to the Winter Olympics for the video experience, which is in high def, 720p. It's going to look stunning. But equally important to NBC are the monetization assets which are this incredible collection of photos. So it's important for them from a business experience. It's important for us to share these great photographs in a high-resolution way. So we have the ability now for the Vancouver Winter Olympics to show, we're planning for about 50,000 images, and the technology behind the scenes to show it to you in deep zoom are something we built in Silverlight, and I want to give you a quick demonstration of that. This is actually our third project, our third big project that's been public using the deep zoom tools. We did the Hard Rock memorabilia site, and that's only about 1,000 pictures. We have about 5,000 magazine pages from the Playboy project that's published at Cover to Cover, which I showed at Mix this year. So that technology, we keep learning from that and built up to the NBC Olympic photo experience. And so the first thing I want to show you here at the NBC, it's nbcolympics.com/photos. This is a collection of photos. This is actually, you can look at the bottom, it says Lindsey Vonn. She's our gold medal hopefulist for the women's downhill. And if you remember the 2006 Winter Olympics, she suffered a horrible crash and was airlifted off the course, and she eventually came back to finish the run. Didn't medal, but she's the focus of a lot of story and attention by NBC. And one of the things that NBC Sports does well is to really tell the story of the Olympians, because they find that Dick Ebersol's executive VP, he knows that we will connect better. The audience will connect with the triumph and the sadness of the Olympians behind the scenes if you can find out more about them. And one of the ways that we can do that is we can interact and engage with the images. You can find out that Lindsey Vonn probably sponsored by Spider, that particular photo. As we're moving around, notice a few things. I can click to zoom as I move in and out. When we're too far away where we can't resolve a title or a caption, we don't show anything here. But if I zoom in a little bit more, it shows up. We have a grid mode if you want to see all the photos for this gallery. So you can zoom in closer, and again, the captions will still pop on when it's close enough to resolve. We expect during the run-up to the Olympic Games, which are in 87 days from now, that NBC will be putting more and more photos up here. The final thing I want to show you is another gallery, and these are the medals. The medals are fascinating. There's only 86 medal events, so there's 86 individual gold medals that are being minted by the Royal Canadian Mint. And they're beautiful. They are £1 a piece. And a pound of gold, as of last week, was $16,000 each. So these are beautiful, stunning pieces of work, and you can't really get close up unless you have the power of something like deep zoom to give you that detail. Here we're seeing the back of one of the medals. Notice they're curved. That's an orca in the background. The Paralympic Games uses a different theme. They use a raven for their images. In fact, on the back of the Paralympic medal, it's in Braille. So to be able to zoom in and get this stunning detail is an experience that we would not have had if it were not for Bill and his team and the Sea Dragon guys. So I just want to thank you guys for giving us and the Silverlight community the ability to get our mics to work. Now, the ability to do some things that, honestly, you can't do this in Flash. This is one of the things that we really have as the .NET development ecosystem that we can do on the web that's not possible in such a smooth way. Thanks, Bill.
Great. And Scott, you mentioned that you guys are going to be handling 50,000 or more images through the run of the Olympics.
They're going to be coming in pretty hot from Getty and other image services.
Right. So in addition to your Deep Zoom client, you've got a whole back-end workflow.
We do. The back-end infrastructure is substantial. It uses a product we called Big Picture that we built, which is meant for managing incoming streams or large batch processing. To give you a sense, the number of images that are up today, even though they might only number in like 5 to 10,000 images that you might take from a camera, once they're exploded in the deep zoom tile sets, they generate a footprint of over 5.9 million individual little files, the individual tiles. You try running NTFS with 5.9 million files. Deleting that folder takes 45 minutes. So it's a big burden to manage these files. These guys added a feature that we were dying to get called smooth streaming for deep zoom. So you know about smooth streaming for video? Well, smooth streaming for deep zoom is a similar concept. It takes all those individual tiles, packages them up into one fragmented MPEG-4 container, and now those 6 million files go down to 2 million. So it's a big savings for us. Our files get uploaded faster, and the disk footprint goes down from 100 gigabytes to like 40. So little things like that really help.
Terrific.
Great.
Thanks so
Bill.
much, Scott.
Thank you.
Great stuff. So that gives you one example of the kind of things that the technology we've been working on building on and is now available as this deep zoom feature in Silverlight can make possible. There's a bunch of other things we're doing with Seadragon in addition to Silverlight Deep Zoom. And I mentioned our seadragon.com webpage, what we call Seadragon Ajax, and then I've also talked about Photosynth. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that's currently available, and I'm really going to show this to you real quickly here because, quite frankly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Come down to the exhibits. We have a booth down there, and all the stuff I'm showing you here in the first part of the presentation, you can see in that booth. Let's hop back to the browser. So if you go to seadragon.com, and I'll just go to the home page, the main service we provide here is the ability for any individual user to quickly create their own deep zoom image, to stick on a blog page, for example, is the primary goal of that. From seadragon.com, you simply paste a URL into the browser here. And in fact, Scott was just trying this earlier on stage. If you don't mind, Scott, I'm going to hop to your site. And here was a picture on Scott's Flickr stream. And we stuck that over here. And here's that same image. The URL for that was pasted in, and it created this zoomable version of that image now. And this can go full screen. And regardless of how high resolution the photo is, you can quickly and easily create a zoomable page like this, and you just grab that little snippet right there, that little embed code, one line of embed code, and you can take this window, the view window, and paste that on any page. So and this is all built on Azure. So this is an Azure service that we were able to put together fairly quickly because of the power of Azure, with both a web role to handle the front end, the viewer, and also the worker roles in the back that are doing the processing of taking that image from Flickr or anywhere, any URL for any image on the web, we can paste in and create this viewer. Now there's another piece we're working on too. This, by the way, of course, is using Silverlight Deep Zoom for this, and we can go full screen, and we have just this great performance. But we also are trying to look at a reach scenario as well. And we say, well, how far can we take this? Remember, we experiment. We try out different stuff. So I'm going to pop up here to my Tools menu and go to Manage My Add-ons. And I'm going to pop down here to Silverlight, and I'm going to disable it. So I just turned off Silverlight in IE here. And we'll close it. I'm going to refresh this page. And it still displays. And I can still zoom in, and I can still pan around. And I can even go full screen, but you'll notice it's a little slower. It's getting a little slower, getting a little clunkier. So we've also built a version, and I'll right-click here and show you, this isn't Silverlight. We've built a version of the core Seadragon technology completely in JavaScript, and we call it Seadragon Ajax. And that's available for you to work with too. In fact, it's even open source. It's part of the ASP.NET Ajax Control Toolkit today. So you can go to the Ajax Control Toolkit project on Codeplex and even download the whole source. Now, there are some huge limitations. As you can see, just performance, not the least of which. Let's just pop back to Silverlight. So I'll re-enable Silverlight and refresh the page. There it refreshed, and you can see we get buttery smooth performance when we got the power of Silverlight behind us. And more importantly, Seadragon Ajax handles one image at a time, whereas Silverlight Deep Zoom can handle large collections of images. Scott showed you the Olympics. I'm going to show you one of the other projects that Vertigo created, the Hard Rock. You've probably seen this before. I won't spend a lot of time. I just want to make one point here as this site loads, is right there. We just displayed 1,226 individual photos. It's not one photo that's a mosaic because I can rearrange those in a different order. They're all separate photos. Every one of those are high-resolution photos that we can zoom in on, all the details of. And that's what Deep Zoom provides, is this optimization for not only the ability to stream individual photos quickly at the highest resolution, but large collections of photos. And so we do a lot of optimization at the collection level. There's no way that we displayed this initial page of 1,226 individual photos by doing 1,226 round trips to the server to get a thumbnail for every one of those photos. So that's another big feature of Deep Zoom and Silverlight, is optimizing for collections and providing a technology that with a limited number of round trips, we can go to the server and get the components we need. And what I'm starting to zero in on here is some of the design philosophies that drive us on the Sea Dragon team and are the essence of everything we do. So let me go ahead and pop back to the PowerPoint slides just because they'll give a good summary of this stuff. Here's the things we're working on, which we believe are the essence of creating this transformative user experience. The first is we never want the user to wait for the application. Let me summarize them, and then we'll talk about each one in more detail. To help do that, the goal is to go retrieve only the content we need when we need it, and optimize the way we do that to handle arbitrarily large collections of content where the items in that collection can be very large as well. And then we do a lot of visual illusions to kind of create a magical interface, to make this feel more organic and to be a better experience for the user. And they truly are some illusions going on, but we'll talk about what's behind that magic. We use Zoom quite often as a navigation metaphor, because Zoom is a great way, versus in hyperlinking around, to allow the user to navigate through large amounts of content without getting lost. They always know where they are spatially and contextually, and they can zoom out to always get a more summary view, zoom in for details. And a lot of the things you will see built on Deep Zoom and the experiments we're doing at Sea Dragon, the goal is to allow the user to interact directly with the content, not with a user interface between the user and the content, but actually interact directly with that source content. So let's talk about some of that stuff. First, the magic little trick of Sea Dragon and Deep Zoom and Silverlight is to only get the content we need. So we take these massive images, and these can be gigapixel-sized images, and we break them up into lots of little tiles. So when I need to go get that, I can get it in pieces. And I reduce it to different resolution steps. I create a pyramid, a tiled pyramid, so whatever resolution I need on the screen at any given point in time, there's a small amount of information, a subset of these tiles in this tiled pyramid, that I can go retrieve and be able to display that. Not a big lot of magic there, but that's MIP mapping. It's used in a lot of stuff. If you've ever used a mapping application online, you've probably used an implementation of this same basic idea. We take that one step farther, and this is how we optimize for large collections. So with a large collection, we create another tile set for all the items in a collection. And here's just a simple example with 13 items in a collection. And we have a set of 13 small tiles, so I could get a reasonable size thumbnail for each item, with each of these boxes representing a separate tiled file. But that doesn't help me when I have to go get 1,000 of them, because I can't go get 1,000. So I also build a tiled pyramid. And at each successive level of this tiled pyramid, I start packing together the thumbnails for multiple items in the collection inside of one tile. So at the lowest resolution of the pyramid, the tip of the pyramid, I actually have a tiny little thumbnail for every item in the collection. If my tile size is 256 by 256 pixels, a reasonable tile size I can get very quickly, that could allow me to have a really, really tiny thumbnail, 1 pixel, for up to 65,000 items. One round trip to the server, I got a little bit of information for up to 65,000 items. If there's only 2,000 items, I can have more than just 1 pixel in each of those, in that one tile. And as I go down successive levels of the pyramid, I get more and more information, just like I can for an individual item, but now I'm doing it for the collection as a whole. And that is one of the really unique things that Deep Zoom, the Sea Dragon technology, provides to let us go access arbitrarily large collections of information and bring those to the screen very rapidly. The time it takes to retrieve and display information is a function of the display size and the communication pipe. It is not a function of the amount of data. And that's the big fundamental change. Using more conventional techniques, if I want to look at a photo in its full 12 megabyte resolution, on Flickr, for example, I go to the all sizes and I select the original, and I have to wait for all 12 megabytes to download before I can view and pan around in that photo. With deep zoom, as we saw here, we can look, it's not a function of how big any item is in the collection, and really not a function of how big the collection is. Each round trip gives me just the information I need to fill the screen. So it's a function of screen size and the connection speed. Optimizing for large collections and organizing to get information progressively. Now, how do we make the user never wait? That is another hallmark of what we do on the Sea Dragon team. None of the things we build ever show an hourglass cursor. It is our goal that never should the software say to the user, okay, stop right there, don't move, don't go anywhere, I'm busy. And nothing happens until I'm not busy and ready to listen to you again. We never do that. So how do we do it? Stay off the user's event thread. We never do anything on the event thread that takes any measurable amount of time, or certainly anything that has an unpredictable latency, like a network request. All of that happens on background threads. If there's stuff that has to happen on the event thread for some technical or implementation reason, we marshal it. We break it up into pieces. We figure out a way to do it in tiny, small pieces that will never create that delay. Keep stuff that takes time to do off the event thread, and you get this magical transformation in the interface of the application. When we were panning and zooming around looking at these massive resolution photos, let's just hop back. Let's see what we're talking about here. It never pauses. Now, as I zoom in on a particular photo, let's go find one of my favorites here if I can. When you're doing demos, you can never find what you want when you want it. When I quickly zoom in on that, it may have not been full resolution immediately. It may have taken a little time to resolve. Folks at Hard Rock, with some help from Vertigo, hit a little Easter egg up in this corner of this envelope. I zoomed in on this, what looked like a stamp, and it's really a picture of a lot of Hard Rock venues. And I zoom in a little more. Oh, you actually, it's in the search now. It's where you moved it to. Yeah. And we've zoomed way deep into a super high resolution here. As we pan around, you may notice that it takes a minute for the image to resolve, but never while we were waiting for it to resolve did the user interface ever stop working. I could still pan and zoom in farther or zoom out farther. The time it takes to display the content on the screen is a function of how many pixels I have to display and what my particular network performance is at any given point in time. Not a function of how large the collection is. And no, regardless, the user interface is always interactive because we stay the hell off the event thread to do anything that takes any measurable amount of time. We decode images on background threads. We do all our network requests on background threads. And that's how you help make that happen. Again, the ability to take advantage of any resources we have, multi-core and spinning up multiple threads and taking advantage of when you have multiple cores available, all helps you stay off the event thread. And that can really start changing an experience. It really gives the user a completely different feel. Because quite frankly, it's just like having a personal assistant. And the difference between a personal assistant who comes when you call and takes notes and is listening to everything you say and is keeping up with you versus a personal assistant that says, wait a minute, I got the first thing, don't move, I'll be back in 5 minutes. and then comes back again is far less useful than a personal assistant that's always there, always responsive, always on their cell phone, or always ready to take that IM message. That's the way software should work too. We are well past the point in time where users' interaction should have to adapt to the technology of software. We're more than capable of adapting software to how users want to interact. Stay off the event thread. The beauty about that, for anyone who's involved in testing, it's so easy to build a metric for that. That's something you can automate the test for. You can collect the metric, and you can file bugs just as easily as that to say, nope, it's not happening. We're not staying off the event thread. We're creating delays. If you're sitting there trying to figure out what your hourglass, your weight cursor should look like, time to rethink how you approach the problem and go back. Now, the magic tricks that we do. You just can't always instantly give the user exactly what they want. So we want to always be responsive. We want the user to always be able to change their mind, back out, go somewhere else. We listen to that, but when they actually want to look at that photo, in the case of what we're looking at with the hard rock, we can't instantly give them every pixel they want exactly at that instant. So we do magic tricks. And so you may have noticed, and again, I'll just go back and use hard rock as a great example of that. We have springs. If I drag this and release, it kind of coasts and it settles. Every animation I do, I'm just going to click on an item with a single click. It accelerated and it decelerated. That's what we call springs. It's part of the illusion. We're taking up time. We're delaying a little bit. We're dragging our feet. We're giving the user something that, quite frankly, is very enjoyable and natural to look at. It feels like it's natural. But while you're waiting for that animation to settle, we're busy in the background getting the rest of the pixels we need. So it gave us a little time. It's a form of sleight of hand. The other form of sleight of hand we use, and I don't know if you'll ever be able to see it here. We can try. I can try to zoom in something. I'll do it once. You'll notice, again, it's not full resolution when I first zoom in, but then the resolution appears. Your perception is that the whole image comes into focus as that resolution gets loaded. The reality is, remember the tiles? We broke this up into little pieces. We load it piece at a time. We always do the ones in the center of the screen first. We do the ones around the edges after that. Not a lot of extra code to do that one little extra step, but it's a sleight of hand trick. You're usually focused on the center of the screen. You're focused where your mouse is pointing, and we zoom to point. That's where you're looking. That's the tiles we do first. By the time your brain gets around to digesting the peripheral vision, we've probably caught up and gotten those pieces loaded. So again, a sleight of hand trick, a little magic we can do to create an illusion. And that can work really well in making an interface much more accessible. So we update the center of the screen first. We blend from image to image. There's never that hard transition where something blinks in. And where possible, and it's not everywhere, we don't do it in JavaScript. We're still doing some work to fully do this in Silverlight, where we have tiles next to each other, and one may be low resolution and the other is high resolution because the high res hasn't come in. We blend across that edge between the two so you don't see a hard edge. All sleight of hand tricks, all trying to describe that. We do anti-aliasing, and we really, really focus on performance. We just do a ton of benchmarking all the time, and we're very careful to look for when we take performance regressions. And if we do, because we added a new feature, we back up and we spend some time and figure out what we can do to mitigate that performance and still maintain the feature we added. And we try really, really hard never to compromise. We generally have a belief that it's better just not to try to do something you can't do well and effectively than do it and do it poorly and degrade the overall experience. Sometimes you have no choice, so you just have to work harder. When we first started doing the networking in Silverlight, it would have been really easy just to use the networking stack the browser provides. And Silverlight makes it real easy to just do your requests over the browser networking stack. And it does all kinds of cool things for you. It's doing caching, it's helping you out in a great way. But there was no way that we could access that without doing it on the main event thread. And we've already talked about that. We don't do things on the main event thread. So we didn't compromise. We didn't use the networking stack provided by the browser. we built another networking stack, using the other features in Silverlight. It's a whole lot harder to do. We had to do a lot more stuff ourselves that we couldn't rely on the browser just to take care of for us. But at the end of the day, we didn't compromise, and we didn't wind up with a user interface that would have been stuttery and jerky and pausing because we were doing network requests on the same event thread that's trying to do the animation. So I've talked a little about the stuff we've done. We've shown you just a little bit. Please go to the booth and see more of it. I want to talk to you about how we go about doing that at Live Labs and on the Sea Dragon team and the processes we use. Because what we really try to focus on our team is how we can inspire innovation, how we can create an environment, provide the resources to come up with new, interesting, innovative stuff. And I'm going to talk about these main points. Listening to your user, really understanding how stuff gets done at the end of the day, and I think there'll be a lot of nodding heads when I talk about that, but I'm going to take a different spin on it. Talk about the need to invest in that innovation, and then I'll give you real practical examples of how we do stuff and the actual processes we use on our team at Live Labs. So, listen to your users, right? Your customers, your end users. So that may be a consumer if you ship a consumer product or have a consumer-facing website, or it may be your accounts payable clerk if you're providing an in-house application, a line of business application inside your own organization. In any case, your users are your experts in the job that get done. In many cases, your users really know more about how your software works than you do because they use it day in and day out, especially if you've already deployed something and the project at hand is to upgrade that. They have the experience and they're motivated to make it better because it's their life. They live with it day in and day out. But you have to be real careful. You have to not only listen to what they say, you have to listen to what they don't say. Because a user comes from the perspective of the way it works now. That's the way they see the world, is what you've provided them previously. And oftentimes a new innovative approach cannot be seen through that lens. They know what they want to do incrementally, make it so when I tab it goes to this button instead of that button. Give me an accelerator that lets me jump right down to this so I can enter it quickly. Need to improve the performance of this because this is where I spend waiting the most time. But they're looking at it from the very narrow perspective of what you've previously given them. You've poisoned the water if it's a user that's already using an existing version of your application or an application you may be replacing, because that becomes their perspective. So you got to go beyond that. You have to understand what their problem is and listen to what they don't say. I've had examples in my career, which is longer than I like to admit from time to time, of users where I did test scenarios of an interactive application where based on the communications networking we use, we could provide dramatically different levels of performance. And so there was an obvious question: how fast is fast enough? We put half of the new users at speed A. We put half of the new users at speed B. They didn't know each other. They were in different offices. Speed B was 2x speed A. That's what they learned. That was their first experience. Everybody was happy. After 2 months, I switched them all to the middle between speed A and speed B, halfway in between. I had one manager who went from speed A to a 50% speed improvement and said, "This is amazing. How can you do this wonderful stuff? Our life is so much better. This is just heroic." And I had another manager whose users were now using exactly the same implementation at the same speed as these other guys, but got there from speed B down to the slower speed, that wanted me fired. Whatever I did, I was totally making it impossible for them to run the business and to accomplish what they needed to do. Everything's relative, and once someone's used one thing, anything, that becomes the benchmark. So listening to users is good, but you have to listen beyond to just what they say and understand it in a bigger perspective. Big innovations may not be the same as doing incremental improvements. And in either case, there's no one right answer. That's good judgment of when an incremental improvement's the right thing to do versus a big innovation might give you a hugely beneficial result. So let's talk about big innovations. First, I want to talk about how stuff gets done. So as developers, you've all kind of lived this. The stuff we're going to get done is simply the amount of resources we have, heads, people, the time we have available, and how efficient we are. But, Einstein was right. Everything here is relative. So what we expect we're going to get done is based on the maximum time available and all the resources we have and everything working out just right. That's the plan. Now, sometimes we get smarter than that. We put in contingency factors and we don't budget all the time. But we still generally get to that point where what really gets done is something less, and often considerably less, that way back on day one when we started this big plan, what we planned to get done. We compromised along the way. We adjusted. We were flexible. We rescoped. We reset priorities. The point I really want to make here is there's no absolute numbers here. Whatever gets done and what we expect to get done is a function of resources and time. If you have a team of 10 people and you got 6 months, you'll come up with a plan of what will get done in 6 months. And you'll probably get a little less than that done, and hopefully not a lot less than that done. If you have a team of 8 people in 4 months, you will still come up with a plan of what will get done by 8 people in 4 months, and we'll probably do some set of it. We plan based on our point of reference. Everything's relative. How many people I have, how much time I have. The trouble with the really cool, innovative ideas, which were all over at the beginning of the brainstorming, planning, all of that kind of stuff, is once we start having to make those compromises and, we don't have all the time and things are getting tight and we have to start cutting, the cool, innovative ideas usually wind up below the cut line. Well, that would be really fun, that would be really cool, that potentially could really improve things, but we're just not going to have time to get it done this release. We just got to focus on the P0s, got to get those done. And innovation doesn't usually get defined as a P0. That's where so much innovation dies right there. But time, resources, what we can get done is all relative, so you got to help it. You have to be willing to make an investment. Accept the reality that what you're actually going to get done is not going to be what you ideally plan to do. Oftentimes, you're going to lose the stuff that at the end of the day you would have really loved to do, so you have to be willing to make an investment and say, okay, it's all relative. So instead of taking my entire team of 10 people and my entire time of 6 months, I'm going to build a plan based on less people and or less time, and I am going to invest a % of that to work on innovative ideas. Now, how do you do that? Is that a piece of the schedule that everybody's involved in? Is it 2 people that really have some great stuff and put them to the side and they work asynchronously to the rest of it? Any of these are great ideas. But that leads us to, well, where does the cool, innovative idea come from? I manage the Sea Dragon team. I'm not the source of all the great innovative ideas. I do my best to kind of set big picture goals. This is where we want to get as a team. But the innovative ideas on the Sea Dragon team come from each and every member of our team, and we encourage that. Developers, program managers, testers on the team, they come from those people. Comes from passion is where innovation comes from, and people have passion. You have people that are passionate about what they're doing. They'll come up with cool ideas. So we create some time, and I did this in Live Labs under the overall guise that, hey, we're a labs organization. We can do this. We can experiment. And what I found in only a year of doing this, and we've been doing it for almost 3 years now, is that, oh my God, 20 years as a software development manager before I came to labs, I should have been doing this. This stuff applies to getting anything done and done well. Empower people. Listen to what they say, listen to their ideas, and allocate some resources and some time to be able to pursue it. You'll discover and adapt as you go, but you have to start with no real strong preconceptions of where you're going. So here are some specific things we do at Live Labs. And again, I want to frame this to say that most everything that I've shown you today, the deep zoom feature in Silverlight, our Sea Dragon Ajax, these all started as a passionate individual idea from one member of our team who we gave some time and some resources and say, well, prototype something, see what you can do. That's where these ideas came from. So we're not just research, we also deliver code, and we work on some really tight schedules because we work hand in hand with a product group. So it's always a balance. That's my inspire and enable balance. We used a Scrum-based agile development process, very effective way to tackle any type of project, and it really works well here. So small teams that tackle projects, we give the real clear objectives once we've focused on what we're going to get done. We do real short sprint cycles, so we've got clear metrics on a real short time frame. And we do those daily Scrum meetings so everybody stays in sync with what everyone's doing. And it doesn't take a lot of process, it doesn't take a lot of overhead, it really helps the efficiency of the team. We aspire in a labs organization to have this 50-50 balance between what I call inspire and enable. Now that may be a little heavy balance for a true product development or production environment. For us, it's the right balance. And the things we do to encourage that inspirational work is we do an out-of-the-box week once a quarter. We stop everything, cancel all the meetings, we don't schedule a sprint, and everybody gets a week to work on what they want to work on. And we put very few, virtually no constraints around that. Again, we try to inspire, we set some goals, we talk about the tough problems that, man, if we could solve these tough problems, this would really be breakthrough. But basically, we leave everybody in the team totally free to experiment. 3 great things come out of that. The first is everybody gets a breather from the grind of what they work on, and they come back refreshed and more productive when they go back to the production work that they were working on before and will probably dive back into after. The second is we get a really good bunch of cool ideas. And again, many of the things that we ship today and you can use from Microsoft that started in the live labs, that's where they started. One person in an out-of-the-box week went nuts and tried something else. And then the third thing is we create an overall improvement in morale in just that belief that there's an organization that cares about individuals and what they think and what they're working on and cares about the development of those people. 3 big benefits we get from that process. Now, in addition to that, we also schedule time in our sprints to really focus on these new ideas and not just do the production work. So let me stop there, and I want to show you some stuff that I've never shown anywhere else, and it's not stuff that's in Microsoft products, and I'm just a labs group. I can't talk to you about if and when it ever might be. It's just some experimental stuff. But I want to give you some real concrete examples of things that have come out of this process that we use beyond what you've seen that we're already shipping. So I'm going to switch over to the demo B machine now. And I think I'm switched here, but am I not? Ain't it always the way? All right. It's the demo C machine. So this is a cool, fun little app. I don't want to get too hung up on the user interface of this. That wasn't the real goal. It was more of a technology goal. But this is a little Silverlight application. Anyone could have built this app using Silverlight. And where we wanted to apply the concept, some of the principles of Seadragon for a never-wait user interface, zoom as a metaphor, and progressively load data, but didn't want to rely on deep zoom and those pre-computed tiled pyramids, because that can be a limitation. If I have to prepare all my data in advance, that limits how I can apply it. So this Silverlight app is using the API that's provided by Bing Search, Bing Image Search specifically. It's just talking to the public API that's available from Bing Image Search. And I did a search on Mars rover and I started popping up results. And the developer who did this thought it would be cool to put them in a spiral and make them round, and that was fun, and and just part of the fun that we had with it. But there is a kind of key principle here, is that using zoom as a metaphor, I'm progressively scanning through this, and you can see images are being loaded sequentially, but none of the work to load those images is happening on the event thread. My interface is smooth and it has springs. And one of the reasons, the concepts behind putting this in this spiral view, of course, at any point in time, if I mouse over this, it's search results. I can click on the link, there's the link that appears, and I can go directly to that web page. But the reason we kind of played around with this spiral view is the idea, we thought about what we did with always loading tiles in a pre-computed tile in the center of the screen, because that's where you're focused. So we said, let's present search results that way. Let's have the new results always show up in one point, so your eyeballs are focused right where your mouse is pointing, and they move out to your periphery. So you're not scanning the screen looking at a big scrolling page of images. You always stay focused. That was the idea that was being explored here, along with the technology to say, hey, can I hold on to a lot of the magic of Seadragon, a never-wait user interface, springs, progressive loading, without the crutch of having to pre-process all the data into tiled pyramids to do it. And the end result of that was, yeah, you can. And I'm going to zoom back out. We've zoomed quite a ways into this. And this is just a Silverlight app. But a Silverlight app where all we did was applied, those basic principles of staying off the event thread and never waiting and loading information progressively and using springs. So again, one of the fun little ideas that came out. This next one takes a second to load. Let me do that. So I'll get that loading. We also wanted to look at exploring, okay, how big can these collections get? How much data can we really handle at one time and process? And we have some specific constraints today, certainly some big constraints using JavaScript, and some other constraints with Silverlight, because Silverlight's designed to go across all browsers on all platforms. So there's the bar, the minimum bar is kind of low to be that least common denominator for all of that. But we said, okay, as an experiment, let's take away those limits. Let's just see what we can do. And so we built this demo taking full advantage of the GPU and as many cores as we can. And I'm just running this on a laptop. This is no big honky system we're running on. But what you're seeing is a little hard to digest. That's 6,500 individual items, and they actually happen to be newspaper pages. And we can zoom in at extremely high detail on these newspaper pages, but I've got a page that's got 6,500 of them. And I can fly them around and I can reorganize them. So by taking advantage of a bunch of my computing resources, I can really up the ante of how much data I can handle. The newspaper, by the way, in question here is our beloved Seattle PI, which is no longer printed. It's only an online news service today. And what we're looking at is the last issues of the Seattle PI from October 2008 until it stopped printing in March of 2009. Every page of every issue is there. And we also, with this experiment, wanted to kind of pursue this idea of zoom as a navigation metaphor. So let's imagine, from the list of all the possible papers, I performed a search, and the result of that search brought up 6 different issues that I was interested in. And then I might select a particular issue and now go into a browsing mode. And we kind of trying to separate the reading versus the browsing experience of a paper. And my ability to scan through a newspaper in the same way I might flip through the pages of a paper, jump to a particular page. I always love the comics, I'll jump there. Again, zoom in on the details, zoom out. This basic ability to never have to wait for content and be able to load content progressively can fundamentally change the way we can access information. Again, this does build on those pre-computed tile sets to make that happen. So that's the last thing I'll leave you with here today. Well, if I have time, how are we doing time-wise. We're running tight. So this is another experiment where rather than relying on these pre-computed collections of images, what can we do by dynamically accessing it? So Flickr is a cool little photo service, but most importantly, it gives us a nice API, and we can write against that API. So one of our developers tried this experiment. So I'm just going to do a search on Flickr for, oh, I don't know, I like tigers. Let's search for tigers on Flickr. And what we're doing is retrieving the results of that search on Flickr via their API, but again, providing a never wait UI that lets me display that result as fast as I can retrieve the content, lets me use zoom to look at more of them on a page at a time, and you can see I haven't retrieved them all, or zoom the other way and look at them in their highest resolution. So again, taking some of those same concepts and just being able to pull off the magic without having to have prepared the content in advance. And I'm going to show you one last thing, which is zoom is a great metaphor for navigation, but if zoom is always, using a mouse wheel and free pan and zoom, it can be a little cumbersome. So one of our developers and designers and a couple of program managers and designers and a couple developers built this application as an experiment for exploring personal photos. So if you come down to the booth, you might get to meet Lutz. Lutz, are you here? Lutz isn't here. This is Lutz and his wife. This is every photo Lutz has taken since he's owned a digital camera from October 2000 up through December is when he grabbed this set. And what this application is kind of the equivalent of just dumping that box of photos on the table. And we're going to explore it using zoom and direct manipulation where we interact with the content. And all I have to do is click on the pile, and we break the pile into 4 separate piles. And in this case, we used time as the metadata to create that separation. One could imagine other metadata could be used. And I can keep clicking on any one pile, and that pile breaks into 4 more piles, and the other photos push off to the edges of the table. So we've tried to create the electronic equivalent of pawing through a huge pile of photos. And when I finally get down to a pile that will all fit on the screen, then we just go ahead and spread it out on the screen. Indeed, I click on any one photo, and I can go into a slideshow mode and scan through the photos. And again, because this is deep zoom and Sea Dragon, we can zoom in on any of these photos or scan through. And I just click anywhere on the screen, and I can start stepping backwards and follow other piles and go down other paths. So this is using a single click. It could be a TV remote. It could be a touch screen. What really made this application possible is that never wait user interface and progressively loading content so all that information was available. This application works whether the information is stored locally or stored remotely. It doesn't matter because of that fundamental ability to get information progressively. So let's pop back here. So things I'd ask you to do. First of all, try out some of this stuff. Come visit seadragon.com. We have a showcase there. We have lots of information and tools for developers. Come on down to our booth, talk to us more, see this stuff in detail. Use some of these tools, whether it's Deep Zoom, whether it's our Ajax stuff. It's available. We have this stuff there for you to use. And think about your own plan for how you can inspire innovation in your own organization. And the one thing I will encourage you as a manager in that scenario is be prepared to be surprised. Let things happen, let them surprise you, and run with it. Because if you're not surprised, if it doesn't hit you out of left field and send you someplace you weren't even thinking about, it probably wasn't innovation. So be willing to let go with that. Feedback's important. Thanks for coming. I encourage you to fill out the feedback forms online. If you haven't heard it already, Microsoft is donating $1 for every attendee who fills out a feedback form to the Boys and Girls Club. And that'll turn to $2 if we get 5 feedbacks from you from 5 different sessions. So please help us out, help us make the conference better, and fill out a session. And visit Channel 9 to learn more about Channel 9 and what we're doing there. Thanks so much for coming. I know I've pushed to the end of the time.